Hello, BookTube. As you may know, David Wiley and I are having a little read-along of two for J.R.R. Tolkien's The Two Towers. There you see Orthanc and Barad-dûr there, bristling and flexing. This is the second part of Tolkien's book, The Lord of the Rings, and David Wiley and I decided to skip a reread of The Fellowship of the Ring just this one time. We both read the book a million times. Fellowship's not going anywhere. We decided to skip that this one time and jump straight into The Two Towers, which, is unconventional for a read-along. It won't work for first-timers, obviously. You shouldn't do that if you're a first-timer. But I have found it immensely rewarding. Let's get that a little closer there. You might as well have something entertaining to look at. I found it immensely rewarding to do this, to dive right in. I don't think I've ever quite done it. I've jumped around. Every once in a while you want to read the Battle of the Pelennor Fields or the Last Debate or some chapter like that. In my case, it's the Council of Elrond. Every once in a while, you want to just jump in and read that. But the whole book, starting straight with the first chapter of the Fellowship of the Two Towers, this is an unusual reading experience, and I have absolutely loved it. Just loved it. Now, David Wiley made a video about the first 5 chapters of the Two Towers, which is what we were reading for the first week of this. And I made a bunch of videos. I once again outratioed my co-host because I wanted to talk about every single chapter. And I want to do that today as well. Because I am up to the chapter, The King of the Golden Hall. And our story so far is, I've recounted it in all of these videos, the Fellowship of the Ring, a group of 9 people, goes on a quest with the One Ring, the Master Ring of Sauron, the Dark Lord, which is a construction of pure evil, and it is a threat to the whole of the world. If Sauron, the Dark Lord in Mordor, gains control of the One Ring, if he lost it thousands of years ago, if he gets it back, then there will be a night with no dawn. There will be darkness with no hint of victory to come, no chance of it. He will rule despotically and forever in Middle-earth. Freedom will be extinguished. So the Fellowship decides that it's not good enough to hide it or protect it. We need to destroy it so that no one has to face this peril again. And the only way to do that is in Sauron's stronghold, in Mount Doom. If you throw it into the volcanic fissures of Mount Doom, that will dissolve it. That's an impossible quest. Sauron is, in addition to being the Dark Lord of Middle-earth, he's also a massively powerful warlord of troops and armor, equipment and forces and that sort of thing. It's almost foolhardy to do. The only thing that would have been more foolhardy would be for the powers of the West, the elves, the wizard Gandalf, all of the people in the Fellowship of the Ring, to try to head an army and do it by force. That certainly wouldn't have worked. This has a chance. It's possible that a small group of people can slip into Mordor where an army would not. They try. Anyway, they set off, and they meet with catastrophe right away. Not only does Gandalf appear to die, fighting a creature called the Balrog, but Boromir, a man of the great kingdom of Gondor in the south, which plays a crucial role in the story for 2 reasons. One, because it's the main military bulwark against Mordor in the south. They are across a river from each other and at odds with each other. If Gondor were not there, Sauron could walk into the rest of Middle-earth with almost no resistance. That's one reason why it's so important. And the other reason why it's so important is because Gondor has been missing a king. It has a steward, but it has been missing a king for a long, long time, for thousands of years. And the idea of the return of the king is enshrouded in legend in Gondor, but what most Gondorians don't know is that the line isn't broken, and there is an heir to Gondor. His name is Aragorn, and he's in the Fellowship of the Ring with Boromir. Boromir knows all of that, and he is chafing because he doesn't understand why we don't use the ring to fight Sauron. My kingdom, which I love, Gondor, is even at the end of its strength, it is very strong, but it can't win against Mordor. With this ring, we could, provided the right person wore it. That is the first step towards anyone taking this ring and becoming a new Dark Lord. And everybody, all the wise, know that. And Boromir tries to take the ring from young Frodo, the hobbit who is carrying it. He is the designated ring bearer. Frodo has to flee from him. And so Frodo and Sam, his servant, take off to continue the quest into Mordor by themselves without the rest of the Fellowship. They don't want to endanger anybody, and not just from the forces of Mordor, but also from the temptation of the ring. And they've no sooner fled than Boromir is attacked by a gigantic party of orcs who abduct Merry and Pippin, two young hobbits that also went with the Fellowship. And in the process of abducting Merry and Pippin, they kill Boromir, who lives only long enough to tell Aragorn that he tried to take the ring from Frodo, and then that's it. I failed. I have paid. Aragorn and Legolas the elf and Gimli the dwarf decide to chase after the orc band, even though the orc band has an unbeatable head start. They can't catch up. They try anyway. And in the course of their adventures trying anyway, they encounter Gandalf, who is alive, and recounts to them that he fought with the Balrog, that he was brought to the doorstep of death, or maybe even died. It's a little unclear to me, and is now back with enhanced powers and enhanced determination to lead the fight against Sauron. And when we meet Gandalf in that chapter, The White Rider, the friends are happy to reunite. They are remounted on horses in order to make their journey to Medusel, to the hall of King Theoden of the Kingdom of Rohan, which is an ally to Gondor. And they're right there. They're right in Rohan to start with. So they need to go to the king and alert him, tell him what's going on, and get a sounding out of what he plans to do about it. And that chapter, actually, quite a few chapters. The first chapter that we read, The Departure of Boromir, ends with a group of people saying, "Let's go!" And they jump away. They run away, and the chapter ends there. The next chapter ends that way. And the chapter after that ends that way. The chapter with the Riders of Rohan ends that way, with our characters mounted, headed off. We're off. The chapter with Treebeard, where Merry and Pippin find the Ents. They find a group of beings called Ents, gigantic tree herders, who are no friends of Saruman anymore. And at the end of the chapter called Treebeard, the chapter ends with them saying, "Off we go!" And we get to the chapter of the White Rider, and the friends meet, and they remount themselves, and the chapter ends with, "Off we go!" And you start to notice a pattern like that, because it keeps repeating itself in every chapter of these first few chapters. Now we're at the chapter called The King of the Golden Hall, which follows, we don't break the narration here, we don't jump in time, it follows Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and Gandalf as they ride to King Theoden's palace. They ride to the stronghold of the center of his power. And they are challenged by door wardens. And when they get there, Gandalf warns everybody, don't use any haughty words, no proud expressions. This is a kingdom at war. This is a tense period, so don't push things, is basically what he says. And they eventually get an audience with the king, with Theoden. And Theoden is not an attractive sight. He is bent so low as to almost be double, long white beard, looks so old that he could barely stand. It doesn't jive with what Gandalf remembers, but that's the way of it. And not only does he look old and crabby, but he is old and crabby. He tells Gandalf, when your great horse Shadowfax came back without you, I rejoiced at the return of the horse, but I rejoiced more at the absence of the rider. You're a meddler. You only bring trouble. You're not welcome here. We learn right away, we learn long before we get to Theoden's Hall, that a lot of that attitude is coming from a character named Grima Wormtongue, who is an advisor to the king, and who has been slowly sapping his will, aging him almost, psychologically anyway, but it's had physical effects, slowly telling him the world is too dangerous, this is too much of a burden, don't trust person X, person Y, or person Z, always the best people, the most trustworthy people. Trust me instead. I only want to ease your burdens. You're too old for all of this. And the reason why Wormtongue has been doing that is because he is surreptitiously in the pay of Saruman in Orthanc, who is at war now with Rohan, and wants Rohan to be weakened from within. Wormtongue has been taking his promise of riches, of reward, when Rohan falls, for years now. And it's had its effect, which is that Theoden is not only physically bent double and weak and wizened, but also mentally not the proud, bluff warrior king that we assume he was in earlier years. Our heroes get to the Golden Hall, and they are met with this kind of reception. Not only does Theoden berate them, but then Wormtongue does, a counselor to the king, berating the king of Gondor, berating Gandalf, who's a wizard come from over the west, berating Legolas and Gimli, who have seen more warfare than. Wormtongue debates with them and argues with them, says, you only bring bad news. We don't welcome you here. Do you bring us anything that's actually helpful? Do you bring us men? Do you bring us horses or weapons? No, you don't. You bring us only bad news. You're not welcome here. And Gandalf finally snaps and says the line to Wormtongue that was, before Peter Jackson's movie, probably his most famous line in the whole book. There's another set of lines in the Peter Jackson movie that Ian McKellen does so memorably that a lot of fans will remember that first. And of course, "You shall not pass" is the immortal Gandalf line from the movies that I think had even more of an effect than it has in the book. But at that moment, when Gandalf is confronting Wormtongue, he says, "I have not passed through fire and death to bandy crooked words with a serving man till the lightning falls." They're on the edge of ruin. Gandalf tells the wardens and the guards of Rohan that if we fight with each other when we should be friends, the only reward we will get is the laughter of Mordor. Finally, Gandalf's had enough, and he pulls a wizard trick. It's again very vague. It's light and sound, like a lightning bolt inside. Light and shadow and sound. It flattens Wormtongue on the ground, and it seems to start reviving King Theoden. He starts to stand up a little straighter and start to see a little better. Now, in Peter Jackson's movie, Peter Jackson enhances the drama of that by having it be an actual physical transformation. Theoden has been literally aged, and we see the great reverse of that as he gets younger and more aware. And I confess, when I first saw The Two Towers in the theater, I thought, that's a little hammy. It's more subtle in the book, but it works. It absolutely does work. And Theoden comes to his senses. He's very angry with Wormtongue. He chastises him that if I'd listened to you much longer, I'd have been crawling around on all fours. And his servant notices that not only is the king's sword in Wormtongue's keeping, in his chest, but so are a lot of other things that men have missed. And it becomes clear, Gandalf makes it clear, the ghastly terms of Wormtongue's bargain with Saruman, which is that you would have had your pick of any kind of treasure and the woman you desire. And that woman is Eowyn, the niece of King Theoden, who is a shield maiden of Rohan. She is impatient. She's young. She's impatient. Doesn't want to be a hostage or a caregiver. She wants to fight. And she's going magnificently later on in the book. She's going to get a great chance to do that. It's a horrifying moment. Éomer, who we met in The Riders of Rohan, who is back now in Theoden's Hall, in that moment wants to kill Wormtongue when that is revealed. Gandalf says it as a fact. Éomer had only suspected it. Gandalf stops him and tells Theoden instead, give him a chance. Give him a choice. You're free to do what you want. Rohan is going to war against Isengard. You can have a horse and you can earn back your honor. Or if you have your freedom, what will you do with it? Will you disappear? Will we never see you again? Wormtongue is a thoroughly evil character. He decides to flee Rohan. He certainly is not helping the king. Oh, there's my little shield maiden of Rohan. And Theoden is by this point in the chapter renewed. He's not bent double anymore. He's the old King Theoden. His people, his warriors, are rejoicing to see it. They say themselves, never after this will we consider Gandalf to be a bringer of woe. This is a miracle. You've brought us our king back. You've got rid of Wormtongue. And Theoden tells Gandalf, Gandalf advises him, take your women and children and head for a stronghold where they can be safe in war. Lead them there right away. Don't wait. And Theoden tells him, well, you're better at healing than you thought you were because I'm not. Someone else will lead them, but I'm going to war. I'm going to redeem my name and maybe go down into death that way. And our heroes feast a little. Aragorn says there's no rest for the weary. We cannot make merry. We cannot rest. We must move on. You must muster as many men as you can, and we're going to march. There's not a moment to be lost. And Theoden agrees, and the chapter ends with, away we go. It's the same pattern. It's the exact same pattern. Now, if you might be tempted to think, well, gee, that's awful repetitive. That's now that I notice it, that's kind of amateurish. Of course, you would be reading the wrong author if you think that. Tolkien was not amateurish. And almost every action that he takes in the book is brilliant in one way or another, even if it's a kind of brilliance I myself don't agree with. We're coming up hard on a large chunk of a kind of brilliance I don't agree with. And this works perfectly. This is pure storytelling genius. Of course, that's how you want to end every chapter. With characters springing off stage left, of course you want to do that. What device is better guaranteed to keep you reading than have every chapter of the first 6 end with someone saying, "Off we go"? It works tremendously well. The only problem with it, and Tolkien again knew this perfectly well, is that you can't keep doing it. You can't keep doing that. Sooner or later, something has to happen in the chapter, not just people meeting and then saying, "Away we go." Something more than that has to happen. And it's coming. It's coming. But for today, The King of the Golden Hall is the chapter that we're reading. I don't know. I'll try to remember to do one of these tomorrow as well, as we just make our way chapter by chapter forward in the Two Towers. David gave a schedule. Books 1 through 5 for the first week, and then the next 5, and then the next 5. February breaks down really well. I figure if I do a chapter a day, I'll probably fit in February or come close to it. So I'm going to try to do that. I missed a day yesterday, but if I don't miss any more days and maybe double up, because some of the chapters, maybe I'll find more in them. I'm finding a lot in this book that I didn't find before, because I'm starting at the Two Towers. That's terrific. I'm always up for reading Tolkien, but this is just great. So I'm going to wrap up the King of the Golden Hall today, and hopefully we'll move on tomorrow to the next chapter. So I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.